over the last 2 years. The accusation, the remark has been made and grown ever stronger that classics and the classical tradition is fundamentally racist and should be dismantled. And you've been pretty passionate about that. I just wonder if you could reflect on that. Catch us up on your thinking. Why is it important? Why is it important there to be such a thing as this museum? Why is it important that the Black intellectual tradition be highlighted and its connection to the classics?
I'm going to answer that question by talking about Martin Luther King, and not because everyone wants to talk about Martin Luther King, but I would like to say a lot of people don't understand him, really. Because if you ask the average person, what did he accomplish? Most would say, I have a dream speech, and he marched on a bridge. But they don't realize that all of his work led to some type of change in legislation. Like, he wasn't just marching and nothing happened. He marched, he pushed people to vote, pushed for the right to vote, because he felt that there was a lot of power. And now he was very political and very strategic. When he would get arrested, they were all strategically planned. He would literally sit and plan for everyone to get arrested. Everyone knew, young or old, when we do this, we want to get arrested. And then he would raise the bail money before they did it. We want to dramatize, what's happening to us. We're not doing anything. We're not causing any violence. But here we are praying, kneeling, being arrested and hit with clubs. And then the bail money would already be ready. By the time they got locked behind a jail cell, they'd have to let them out because they'd have all the bail money raised. And they would do this repeatedly. Now, how did this kind of thinking to create such a powerful force happen? Because he was classically educated. If you read his autobiography, he was on the debate team, he did recitations, all of the key components of a classical education that we know of, he mentions. And so he was classically educated, and he graduates at 16 from high school, right? And he goes to college at Morehouse. And as a 16, 17-year-old, his first essay, I think, in college was on civil disobedience. I don't know any 17-year-old who's interested in civil disobedience or anything that Henry David Thoreau would have to say right now. And so at 16, Martin Luther King develops this vision for the civil rights movement. And that vision came from watching his father being mistreated as a Black man and him feeling helpless as a young boy to stand up for his father, who he highly respected. And so, but he knew that this couldn't be something that could just be fought with guns or violence. It had to be done strategically, it had to be done logically. So not only was he very strategic and very logical, he was a master at rhetoric, which is why his letters and his speeches are so powerful. And he won awards for being on the debate team. And so all of that comes from his classical education. So if we get rid of classics, we get rid of that story.
Everyone obviously cites Letter from Birmingham Jail, and everyone is made to read it. And I basically, my case is that Dr. King is the location of traditional Thomistic ethics in American history. I mean, you could make a case a little bit for Lincoln, but there's not really anyone else in the kind of canon of people that you're supposed to read in high school that are talking about American politics who explain natural law in that very straightforward, very traditional, very, straight out of St. Thomas, straight out of the Treatise on Law way. And, especially when you're kind of like talking about these ideas with, my family tend to be typical New York City progressives who are kind of suspicious of like all my weird natural law stuff and my annoying Thomism. But like, if you explain it as like, this is, you already know this, like the ethics that you taught me because you raised me, reading Dr. King are, that's where he got those ethics. Like that, the idea that an unjust law is no law at all, like that, even that phrase, that's in the American bloodstream because of him.
I mean, and he says that in his autobiography, and he talks about how the works of the philosophers. He named these philosophers, which were all in the canon, helped him to formulate the civil rights movement. And it's just, and so I actually cringe when people say we need to get rid of classics, because as a Black woman, I'm like, you're getting rid of part of my history, and I know we're upset with how they've been misused. I'm not denying that, but if you don't read the classics that he read, you won't really fully understand what he's talking about. You won't even really fully understand the style of writing when Zora Neale Hurston writes Their Eyes Were Watching God, which is, you can see very much inspired by the Odyssey. Mm-hmm. And so Zora Neale Hurston, being part of the Harlem Renaissance, all of those authors, Langston Hughes, Ellen Locke, all of them read the canon. As Ellen Locke says in his New Negro essay, they wanted to stop telling the Black story as some just tragic, violent story. Mm-hmm. All that, it's true, and they do include the story, but they wanted it to be beautiful, and art, a work of art, mm-hmm. that you would value it the way you would value the Odyssey and the beauty of that story. Mm-hmm. And so they would gather, they would talk about these texts together, and they would write literature. Like when Langston Hughes writes, I think it's A Negro Speaks of Rivers. I think is that the title? He's talking about our journey as Black people from, ancient Africa into America. All of it is about our beautiful, tragic, victorious mm-hmm. journey. Mm-hmm. That those of the Harlem Renaissance wanted to show people, this is art, this is creative, this is not just some Black story over there. This is something you should value the way you would value the Iliad and in any other epic that you would, read and say, oh, this is wonderful. That this is an intellectual text for you to read and discuss and digest. And so they were very much motivated by reading these works. And so when you take it, you don't understand the motivation behind them all.